Coach, I guess first of all, when you look at the defensive numbers, and obviously y'all have first half of the schedule, y'all played some explosive offenses. Obviously Alabama being one of those, but the compared to last year, is there anything you can point to, or is it different factors that the defense just isn't quite as consistent as it was last year?
Yeah, that's a fair question and a statement that I would concur with, that for whatever reason, our defense isn't as stout as it was last year in SEC play. But it all can't be put on the defense. You know, people talk about our KenPom numbers being much higher offensively than a year ago, and they are. But in SEC play, sometimes things we do on offense affects, our defense because of being put in some bad situations with all the turnovers that we're committing. And it's probably the hardest thing that there is to guard is turnovers. Shot selection, bad shots, early shots that aren't, on rhythm and open turn into fast break opportunities for our opponents. And certainly at the end of the day, I don't care how we win. I've said that before. I just want to win. But if you want to break it down, by numbers, what we've relied on to win some games has been, on that end of the floor. And certainly with the output that some of the teams have had against us, we haven't been able to rely on that quite as much. But I do believe that it's a big picture issue as much as it is just the defensive end. And I will say that, and this isn't an excuse, this is just facts, that the new charge rules have affected a lot of teams' defenses depending how they're put together and what's important. And we tried, since they made the decision to have a different interpretation of charge block and what constitutes a charge and what doesn't. And just the fear of driving in there and knowing that they can't get, more than likely a charge call changes a lot of early help and forcing the ball to the baseline, because not just the charges, but the thought of, hey, I better be careful is thrown out the window. And like a lot of other teams that play a similar style, it's hurt them as well.
We'll go front row left to Justin and then Steph.
Chris, is there any update to DJ Jeffrey's status?
Yes, unfortunately, he has a knee issue and he'll be out for a while. I'm not exactly sure, but it won't be long term. He definitely will be out though.
Chris, I'm curious, you were just talking about the turnovers and obviously free throw shooting has been a struggle too. I mean, is there some kind of silver lining to seeing that a lot of the issues do seem to be self-inflicted, something you guys can fix as the season goes on?
We talked a lot about this last year especially. Our margin for error isn't as big as some other teams in our league. I felt like going into the season that we had, through recruiting and retention, had raised our margin of error a little bit. Like we had built up some margin for error with the pieces that we had in place. And it usually doesn't, but it hasn't unfolded quite like we anticipated. And so therefore, because of that, we're back to a point where we just don't have a big margin for error in terms of mistakes, in terms of how we have to play to be successful against especially the better teams in the SEC. And it's something that I think all of us have to get our head around, and we have to stay in character, if you will, to how we need to play in order to be successful.
Go to coaches right here, Danny P.
Coach, you mentioned after the game that you felt like you had a team that would be confident and could bounce back from these the recent tough losses. Just talk more about that, and just maybe, I know Tolu's a leader and some of the others, just some of the guys maybe that maybe stepped up right after the game in the locker room and say, look, we can still get this thing going. Yeah,
there wasn't a ton of discussion in the locker room. The the older I get, the more I understand that more often than not, that's not the time to try to fix the problem. You know, everyone is obviously disappointed, you know, with the result, and you know, there's not a lot said. We try to keep our emotions in check and, you know, sleep on it, watch the video, make sure that, you know, we're setting the correct tone for any type of growth that can be gained when you lose like that, and try to, you know, catapult ourselves to bigger and better. And that's kind of where we're at today. You know, yesterday was a day off for them. I know some of them, you know, got in here to take care of their bodies and work, you know, on their shots and free throws, etc., which is usually par for the course throughout the year. But I said that because, you know, I've only been in this league and in this job for 2 years, but the experience that I had last year was one that we found ourselves in a similar situation. And I remember being in the locker room many days prior to practice, after practice, telling our guys that, you know, we had a chance to turn this around, that we were right there to be able to win some of the games that maybe we had lost the first half of the conference season. And like I said Saturday night, you know, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict the future. Just because we had a turnaround last year doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have one this year. And that's what I got to make sure they understand, that it doesn't work that way. And it's important that everybody in our program, you know, doesn't rely on, hey, we've been there, done this, other than the fact that we do have that experience, that we understand what that feels like. Now, how it unfolds is going to be how it unfolds. And we're going to have to do, you know, the things that are necessary to put ourselves in position to win games. But, you know, the experience of having done that certainly can't be a bad thing.
Back to Justin.